Hello, welcome back to another video. My name is Gemma and today I'm going to be trying and more than likely failing to predict the 13 books that will be nominated for this year's Booker Prize. So if you're unfamiliar with the Booker Prize, you probably didn't click on this video, but the Booker Prize is a literary fiction prize for books written in English. 13 books will be nominated on the 30th of July. Then it will go down to 6 books for the shortlist in September-ish time. And then the winner will be announced, I think, October or November. And I'm going to have a go at predicting which 13 books those will be. I did really badly on the Women's Prize for Fiction predictions. So I'm hoping that, you know, that this is my time. This is my time to get some right. So the first 6 books I have on my list are actually books I've already read. Which is quite unusual for me. I haven't often read that many books that I think that are in the category, in the window for nominations for the Booker Prize, but also that I think fit the Booker vibe, you know? It's hard to describe the Booker vibe. It's literary, and quite often I don't love all of the books. So I would say I probably have about a 50-50% chance of liking any given book on the Booker long list. But the 13 books I have chosen, starting with Julia by Sandra Newman, which is a retelling of 1984 from the perspective of Julia. I read this in December and it has had literally no praise attention, and I don't understand why. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was really well crafted. I loved all of the links into the original Orwell text. And I loved the way that she extended and changed. Well, she didn't change the ending. She extended the ending, put a twist in. Well, not really a twist, but anyway, I loved the ending. And I loved Julia as a character, and I loved the way that Winston was portrayed from a female perspective. I just thought it was really, really cleverly done. And I can't believe it hasn't been nominated for more prizes. So hopefully this is the one. Hopefully Newman gets this one, the Booker. However, there is another retelling, and I don't know if they will put 2 retellings on the same long list, and that's James by Percival Everett, which is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn, the Mark Twain children's book. And Percival Everett has been nominated before, so that bodes well for him. And this book has had pretty consistent praise from everybody that I've seen review it. It retells Huckleberry Finn, but from the perspective of Jim, the black slave, who forms an unlikely friendship with Huckleberry, and you follow their adventures down the Mississippi River. And there are a lot of periods within the original children's book where Huck and Jim are separated, and the way that Everett fills those spaces is really clever. The way that he portrays Jim in contrast to the way that Twain presents him is really, really, well, it's profound, but it's also quite hilarious, some of the ways that he does it. There's a lot of humour in this book, and I think Everett nailed it in this. I didn't like it in his previous book, the one that was nominated. What was it called? I can't remember. But I didn't like it in that book, but in this one I think he's just got the tone perfectly right, and I really enjoyed the ending. Again, similar to Julia, the ending changes sort of your perception of the original, and I like the way that he did that. I thought that was cool, though I think there are maybe some die-hard Twain fans that maybe don't like that so much, but I definitely preferred Everett's version to Twain's. Next up we have a book that I've read really recently, and that's Blessings by Chukwueuka Ibeh. Apologies if I've pronounced that really wrong. And this is about this is a coming of age story and a queer love story set in Nigeria. Is it set in Nigeria? I think it is. And it's told from 2 perspectives, from the perspective of the son and the perspective of the mother. And it's about how the young boy, Obafuna, sort of comes to terms with his sexuality, and also how his parents come to terms with that. And when it sort of comes to light that Obafuna is gay, his father sends him off to a boarding school, And so we see his life at home, we see his life in this school, and then we see his life after the school. And I just loved him as a character so much. He was flawed, he was grey for sure, but I just loved him. I loved him a lot, and I really love the exploration of what it means to be gay in a very conservative black country, and the influence of religion on that as well. I thought it was all really, really well done. It was beautiful, and I highly, highly recommend it. Even if it doesn't get nominated for the Booker Prize, I would recommend picking that book up. Next one that I didn't love so much, but I think is in it with a chance to be nominated for the Booker, because often the Booker will nominate books that I think are quite boring, and that is Orbital by Samantha Harbey. This is looking at, I think it's one orbit of the Earth through the crew of a satellite or whatever it is that's orbiting the Earth. And it's really a lot of philosophical discussions on Earth and life and the meaning of life and the meaning of family and blah, 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 blah. Really short, but nothing happens, and it's just a lot of philosophical waffle, in my opinion. But I think the Booker might like that. Next up, I've put Clear by Carys Davies on here. This is another really short book. It sort of gave me vibes of The Colony by Audrey McGee, which was listed a couple of years ago. And it's set on like a little island in the Irish Sea. And it's about two men who sort of meet on that island. One is sort of, it's very difficult to describe because it's so short, so I don't want to give too much away, but it's about their relationship. They come from different backgrounds, and yeah, it's beautifully written. It's quite lovely. I think if you like things like Claire Fegan, no, is that her name? Claire Keegan. If you like things like Claire Keegan, I think you will like this. For me, there's just not enough meat on the bone for me to get excited about it, but I think other people will love it. Another short book, I seem to be championing short books, so I do have a very long one in a minute, is Cheri by Joanne Beard. This is the story of a woman who is looking to end her life because she has terminal cancer. So it's looking at assisted suicide and that sort of side of things. It's set in the States. It's based on a true story, but it's really looking at that woman's thoughts and state of mind as she sort of reaches the end of her life. And it was heartbreaking and impactful, and it's one of those short books that it works for me being short because it packs such an emotional punch. So yeah, I'd like to see that on the list. So coming to the chunker, probably the biggest book on my list is Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright. This has got a lot of praise in Australia. It won the the Australian equivalent of the Women's Prize, the name of which escapes me right now. And it's also been shortlisted for the Miles Franklin Award, which is effectively the Australian Booker. And this is about an Aboriginal family in Australia, and there's some sort of big mist or fog or something that's coming down over this town, and some of it is sort of ecological disaster, some of it is maybe the gathering of spirits. Oh, just in case you wanted a dog butt. Oh, Rudy, put it away. And then you've got a family in this town, and the guy is trying to solve like climate crisis with donkeys, and his wife is following some butterfly dance, and his son wants to commit suicide. And it sounds weird, but it's supposed to be epic, and clearly a lot of people are enjoying it because it's got a lot of prize attention. Next up, I have My Friends by Hisham Matar, which has recently won the Orwell Prize for Political Fiction and is getting quite a lot of love generally across platforms. And this is about a boy who moves from Libya to study in Edinburgh. And I think he gets mixed up in terrorism of some sort and ends up being trapped in the UK. He can't go home, he can't communicate with his family. I don't know too much more than that, and I feel like it's going to be one of those books that the less you know, the better. Do you agree, Rue? I think he agrees. So yeah, I think that's got a pretty good chance of getting on the long list. Then there is Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, which has been nominated for the Waterstones debut fiction award. And this one follows a young Iranian man who is sort of struggling with drug addiction. No, you can't eat the microphone. He is orphaned and he is living in the States. And he has sort of an obsession with martyrs that leads him to examine his past. And I don't know too much more about it, but I think it's supposed to be quite profound, but also funny as well. So I think that has as good a chance as any. Then we have Northwards by Daniel Mason, which has sort of taken BookTube by storm. A lot of people have loved it. A couple of people have not loved it. But it's about a house and all of the people that have lived there over centuries. So it almost reads like interconnected short stories. Short stories are not allowed for the Booker, but if they're interconnected, it still works. And this is definitely billed as a novel. And we saw last year Jonathan Escoffrey get nominated for his book, which was sort of interconnected short stories as well. So I think that has a good chance. And as I say, lots of people have been enjoying that. Rudy. Next up we have Ours by Phillip B. Williams. And I think this one sounds really, really interesting. This is an exploration of the spiritual cost of freedom, and we follow a young woman who sort of goes round freeing black slaves from plantations. Really, you're taking up the show, mate. And she creates this sort of magical town called Ours, where all of these people can live together and create a community outside of all of the outside noise, and they can flourish as themselves. But then things start to crack as time goes on. So yeah, it sounds really interesting concept, and I really, really want to read that one. So it'd be great if it got long listed. Then I have The Fertile Earth, and this is the only one that I've chosen that is not yet released. This comes out in September by Ruthvika Rayo, and this is about two children, Krishna and Vijaya, and they are separated by caste. So one is like the rich family, and one is the servant, and they go out to hunt a tiger one day. Something dramatic happens that forces these two children apart, and they come back together years later, but they have changed sort of beyond recognition in the same way that India has. And yeah, I think it's an interesting look at caste and place and how people change and all of that. So it definitely sounds like a Gemma book. Whether it's a book is another question. And the last one on my list is Rosarita. I don't know if I've actually written that down right on my pad. By Anita Desai. I'll put it here. But this author has been shortlisted for the Booker 3 times before, but has not released an adult novel in 10 years. So I think I'm actually in with quite a good shot with this prediction. And this is about a young Indian student who travels to Mexico to practice her Spanish. And while she's there, she's sort of enjoying her sort of sense of anonymity to a degree. And someone comes up to her and says that she recognises her because she looks just like her mother, who used to paint in Mexico. And this is something she didn't know about her mother, and it sort of unlocks an element of her past, and it interrogates grief and identity and art. And I think it sounds very, very Booker. Very Booker. So those are my 13 guesses. I would love to know if you've read any of these, what you thought, and we'll see what gets nominated on the 30th. Sorry if this is wobbling, Rudy is playing. If you're interested in seeing my very patchy history with the Booker, I'll put my tier ranking of all the Booker books I've ever read here that I did last year, and I will see you very soon with another one. Bye guys.